Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Lost Kingdoms. As always, I'm PA. We're gonna head to Mount Jarndun this time, but we had to prepare our deck a bit first. This is not a situation in which we're going to be wanting to bring fire monsters, except for the red dragon, obviously. Or definitely not wood monsters, because, as you might imagine, a volcano is not a conducive place for leafy beings. A conducive environment, perhaps? Whatever. The point is, as you can see, convection means absolutely nothing in the Lost Kingdoms universe, but it doesn't matter because this is one of the coolest locales we've visited thus far. It's not helped too much by the fact that this is basically just a filler level, not unlike the Bridge of Sarvon, but on the other hand, this level is actually interesting and has a pretty interesting visual design. Giant spikes of rock and magma poking up. So, as the fairy just stated, our goal is the temple on the other side of this mountain, but we obviously have to traverse some fiery situations to get there. But if you pack your deck only with water creatures, you're going to have a huge problem because volcanoes are made of fire and earth. As exhibited by the behemoth here, behemoths are actually one of the most powerful earth creatures in the game. In fact, they are the earth creature that deals damage to every single water creature on the screen, and that thing just got beat up by a spike of rock. Now, behemoths are huge and have massive amounts of HP, but their attacks are pretty much non-existent because their turning rate is so poor that blue fairy isn't worth it. So when you're trying to fight a behemoth, just try to keep behind it and you should be fine. They're also stun locked incredibly easily. Like, even a Crystal Rose, I think, will stun lock a behemoth appropriately. The main problem is just not running out of cards against them. You want to use things that try to hit multiple times, like the Lich, or like especially the Giant Elephant. Or Elephant King, rather. But obviously, this stage is not going to be one we're going to want to revisit too much, so we're going to want to get as much treasure as we can. There are going to be a couple of different cards that we can get here, mostly just Earth and Fire Element as everything else, but most of them are things we already have. It's just cards for cards' sake. In addition to behemoths, you can also find griffins, the Earth Element power-up monster whenever one of these is on the field. Other creatures of the Earth Element will be more powerful, and attacks and monsters of the Water Element will be significantly weakened. So you just want to be kind of careful around that. They never throw griffins into a fight with fire monsters, though. And yeah, those spikes can hurt you. It doesn't really look like it, but I mean, there's got to be some danger. Yeah, as I was saying, they never really throw griffins into a fight with all other sorts of things. But that's probably for the best. Lost Kingdoms isn't exactly the most fantastic game for enemy combinations in combat, we'll say. Just like back in the buff stage, the White Fog stage, where we didn't have any enemies that were to be buffed, just tons of buffs. Again, it's like Lost Kingdoms has a lot of good ideas, but never really applies them appropriately. So, the first fire enemy of the stage is the Ifrit. Ifrits are huge, and they will fire pretty irritating fireballs and teleport around the stage. They are pretty much completely invulnerable while teleporting, and their fireballs are actually fairly irritating because they have a homing element to them. The fact that they also walk at a decent clip doesn't really help my Dragon Knight targeting here, but we're alright, we got it. However, the stage knows that you're going to be losing HP fairly quickly and that it's going to need to be putting deck points all around for you, so it's not too shy about those. The only problem is you're not going to have any cards to put into your deck at the deck points, so what are you going to do? But as I said, water creatures are significantly weakened, so even the Kraken, one of the most powerful water creatures in the game, only did 22 damage to this thing. Because A, its element means it has an elemental affiliation against water and therefore a resistance to it, and B, its ability further weakens water-type monsters. So, you can't put it all in here. So, turns out the boss that we've been going after all along is actually the Enchanter as well, so our goals are lining up pretty well with what everybody's been telling us thus far. We want to save our kingdom, Enchanter needs to go away, Enchanter's causing the Black Fog, terrorizing our kingdom, we just got a Tiger Mage if I'm not mistaken. A noble thing to find here in the middle of this volcano. And a free Dragon Knight. Dragon Knights are never bad. I'll never turn a Dragon Knight down. People will come up with like, here sir, could you care for another course of, say, Ifrits? And I'll be like, no thank you, I'm full. But a second person will come along with a platter full of Dragon Knights, I'll be like, maybe one more. Just one. Also, I'm a bit confused in a moment here. I don't think I caught it just yet, but there's actually an interaction with those towers that are spaced around the level. And, okay, I was sort of wrong. They do stick griffins with hands of fire, which I'll explain in a moment since that one just died too quickly. But it appears the AI is not clever enough to not run into magma fountains, so that's a bit of a problem for the hand of fire itself. Just kind of died anyway. And I finally hit something with the zombie dragon. I have been trying to do that for ages. It's just such a slow attack that you almost never land it, but it's so satisfying when it does land. The Ifrit card is actually fairly useful. It fires the fireball that they use, which is fairly powerful. But, oh, and here's where I figure it out. I'm like, oh. Alright, Merciless Flames of Damnation. What do you got to say? Okay, that's nice. I think that's it. So, right in here is the boss fight. The Red Dragon flanked by two Hands of Fire. Hands of Fire are the fire equivalent to the Hand of Pain. They power up fire-type monsters and power down wood element monsters. You'd think it'd be almost more appropriate for a buff monster to buff against the thing that an element is weak to, like Hands of Fire would reduce water damage, Griffins would reduce... It's been a little while since I recorded this. Is it earth damage for water or for or wood element damage for earth monsters? That sounds right. Oh, of course it is. I forgot to look at the thing at the top left of the screen. It's right there. So I was thinking, you know, I'll capture this and then I just pressed B by accident instead of throwing the card, so... No dice. You can't actually capture that, but I was going to try to use the experience for the eye that I have in my deck there. So that was actually a 5-star run of that level. There's nothing more to it, that's all of it. We don't need to worry about the highest reward on this tier because we already have the Red Dragon. Get a couple of Hands of Pain though. They're firing Flaming Skulls. Or Hands of Fire, sorry, Hands of Pain were the ones that were Water Skulls. But we're actually going to keep going this episode. That is a fairly short level and we have something else to show off before we go to the next stage. Because while the Rora Rock Temple is the next stage, it's fairly short and with good reason. It's... well, you'll see. But in the meantime, we have to kinda reformulate our deck. I never did get a chance to use the Ice Golem in that stage, kind of a pity, but we'll see it later. But we just want to fill our deck with a more diverse set of creatures again. Namely, all of our Banshees, and figure a Mega Mandragora, toss it in there. We've already got the Evil Eye that we're leveling up, we don't need to throw that in there again. And because I just saw it in here, let me finish up my thoughts on the Ifrit. What it does is it fires the fireball, but it also costs you health, even if you have sufficient magic crystals to cast it. But it is a fairly cheap magic crystal cost and a fairly high amount of damage, so if you don't mind the drawback, it's actually pretty good. Zombie Dragon still doesn't have enough EXP to level up though, so we're gonna keep training that too. Eventually, he will become strong. Alright, welcome to the temple. Alright, time to leave the temple. Yes, the god of creation has awakened, whatever that means, and considering the god of destruction was alluded to, if I'm not mistaken, in regards to the opposite continent, we can probably guess what kind of dichotomy is going on here. 5 runestones per continent, 2 continents, 2 gods, power of the gods contained within runestones. It happens. Unfortunately for the god, it chose to guard its temple with a bunch of chumps. Goblin lords are one of the enemies that you'll encounter here, and they are pitifully weak compared to pretty much anything you've been fighting thus far. Alright. But that's almost made up for because their companions are terrifying. Steel skeletons are huge and dangerous. 60 HP, massive resistances, and a fair amount of damage as well. Steel skeletons are a huge threat in this temple, and you have to be careful of them at all times because they're one of the only 2 enemies, I want to say, that appear here. The other one being, of course, the Goblin Lord. The only problem is, with the encounter rate, you are going to be beating the shit out of dozens of skeletons before everything is over. And it's going to be a card marathon almost more than anything else. You've got to make sure you don't run out of attacking abilities before you finish the stage. Now, this level is fairly small, but it does still have its fair share of hidden red where are you? We gotta beat up a Goblin Lord first, come on. Cut me some slack. And of course only the classiest of attacks. So, as I was saying, there's some hidden red where the hell are they? There we go, there's one. Alright, so there's one, and then there's supposed to be one over here. Son of a bitch! The encounter rate is really high in this dungeon. It's a pretty big problem when you're going through to collect everything, but it is especially a big problem when you're going through the level again. And when I say that, you'll see what I mean here in a second. Luckily, steel skeletons are quite weak to debuffs, so it's pretty easy to make sure they're disarmed or charmed or what have you. Unfortunately, they're still resistant as hell, so you're going to need to spend like 2 or 3 cards per skeleton. But they give fairly good EXP to compensate, so... Now, are you... No? No, oh, yeah, the spacing for that is really finicky. That fairy does not want to show up at all, but eventually, if you go to like that corner, you can get them to appear. So time for treasure. Oh, god damn it. More skeletons. Ah, screw it. Elephant time. The Elephant King is still an immensely powerful card, especially against regular units. The only problem is, the skeletons also have very low... I suppose you'd call it poise, considering this is a FromSoft game. Also, I was trying to capture him with that eyeball, but it didn't work. This lack of poise on the skeletons, as well as their high knockdown time and vulnerability frames, means you can't really chain attacks on them successfully. You have to land multiple smaller attacks, and every attack is a smaller attack considering how much defense they have. Again, just more things to make you spend more cards. Okay, we're just finding treasure here in this dungeon. I guess if there's any appropriate time to find treasure, it's when you're adventuring through an ancient temple. Ah, they're mixing it up, one of each. However will we deal with the farting man and the skeleton? Of course, you can charm them, as you can see here. But, if I'm being honest, they're not exactly the greatest of allies. I mean, it only lasts for a little while, and as you can see, he did all of 6 damage to his ally while he was there. And friendly fire's not on, so you can't just charm one of them and cause them to fight each other to death. So, only the charmed unit is the one that can deal damage. So if you don't charm a skeleton, it's not going to be able to really deal that much damage to its allies. Luckily, the Mega Mandragora is a top tier card, even now, because it has nearly no poise damage, so it will just wreck something in its range pretty much instantly. But if you haven't picked up on it yet, this level is just a huge circle around the main gate. You have to put in the white gem, get the white gem from the chest. Move on, put in the black gem. Next step, get the black gem from the chest. So we gotta go right up here, but first there are going to be a couple of red fairies and even more goblin lords. Thank goodness I encountered so many of these on this particular run and not more skeletons, because you can get really screwed by RNG here. If this game wants to have you fight 2 different steel skeletons at once, you will fight 2 different steel skeletons at once, and you will have no choice about it. Alright, so used runestone power to create monsters, 2 steel runestones. To create more monsters. It's a terrible, terrible cycle. There we go, black gem. And that should be enough to get us through here. So, you've got this huge wall. Place the individual gems on their pedestals, and the floating rocks disappear. Now, you could probably just kind of sneak through after you put one in there, but that doesn't really work. Obviously, you can't. There's still part of a wall there. You've got to obey the idea of a wall. Thanks, Dick, reminding her that her dad is dead. Alright. Whatever. I guess if you want to send a royalty, you gotta do off with a couple of monarchs. So, once again, 2 red fairies hidden in pits. That's pretty much the only trick they have for this level. But they're also going to give you a ton of cards because they figure by this time you might be running a little bit low and they don't want you to have no chance against the boss. But I don't really know what they expect you to do with a plague rat. Ah, Rebus. Perfect. Thank you, Rebus. And 2 more red fairies, because, fuck, why not? So, 2 steel skeletons in 1 fight. All drama all the time. And we've got, elephants. Unfortunately, that skeleton is not going to live for long, even disarmed. So, while he will have a moment to tromp around our zone, it's not going to amount to much for him. There we go, skeletons down. Let's see what those red fairies have to say, shall we? Magic doors, you say? Super powerful cards, you say? Super powerful cards, or face the enchanter? Well, that's no decision at all. Let's go get cards. So while we're going over here, I'll begin explaining the door mechanics because this will take a second, but only a second. In this temple, there are 4 doors off to the side of the main objective, as well as 2 chests, which you can just get if you don't have enough cards. Each door will open if you have 20 unique cards of the respective element in your card library. Now, I've been collecting a lot up to this point, and so I'm pretty much good. But pretty much is not good enough. Even now, after collecting all of the cards I can all game, I'm still short on Earth cards. And that is because you need 20 cards of the respective elements, but there are only 21 or 22 cards of every element in the game. There are 105 cards total, but most of the remaining ones are neutral. So eventually, after you've collected 20 of every individual card, you can go to Hupon Gen. Now, and that's the wood element dungeon, but anytime you unlock one of those doors, you have to go back to the temple. Open the door, Go in, white gem, chest, black gem, chest, place them in the thing, fight steel skeletons, make your way here, open another door. 4 different individual times. Not as much fun. And if at any time you beat the level, if you proceed past this point, this content is locked to the end of the game. You cannot get it. Period. So it's kind of a dirty trick. Luckily, it is possible to grind out most of the cards through transformations to be able to get them from what is currently here. With that said, it's not possible to get everything, so it is possible that you will be stuck, if you will. Now, trading between save files is allowed, which means that you can get cards even if you're at this point in the game and you can't leave. But that would require you to start a whole new save file, fight to where you can get the card, and then go from there. So, that's 3 of the places unlocked. Yawog, Hupon Gen, and the lake. I can't remember its name. It was just on screen. We'll find out in a moment here. But we still need some earth creatures. So, who knows, maybe Alexander will give us one for our fairy collection. He seems like a fairly amiable guy. Maybe he'll round out the collection? Oh, well, our next reward was at 70. What do you got for us? I'll take it. It's not an earth creature, but I'll take it. Blah blah, thank you for collecting fairies. Alexander does not have the most thrilling dialogue, but he's still a pretty cool guy. No, what we need to do is we need to transform or buy something. Well, first let's check to see if she has any Earth Elemental cards we don't have yet. No, she doesn't. What about transformable cards we don't have yet? No, we have griffins. We have water creatures. What about the mummy? Hello, here we go. Mummy has leveled up. We are now able to unlock the Sphinx with its ability, the ultra high frequency shockwave. The Sphinx is very hard to get, but it actually has one of the best card effects in the game. It's basically an Earth Elemental Banshee. So, if you're able to get this one somehow early, I recommend you do so, but chances are you won't be grinding up a mummy enough to get one of these things for a fair while. Still, we had 19 before, and now we have 20, so... Ooh, oh, what was that under the basilisk? I suppose we'll find that out later. But now that we have all that, we can go back to the temple. So, once again, we're going to go back to the Rurarok Temple and start up... You know what? You guys know how this goes. So, we're just going to walk over to the Earth Door, we're going to unlock that, and we're going to get the last area of the game. Nearly. The last secret area of the game, anyway. Look at that, we were 1 short. There's one other Earth card I can get at this time, but since I don't need it, I'll save it for afterwards. The Land of Sands. Temple of Amen Tonk. Oh, that sounds pretty cool. It's right next to the apothecary, too. Like, right next to it, just north. Like, we didn't know that this temple was here? Okay, whatever. Turjan Temple, that's the name of the place, isn't it? Yep. So, next time, we're going to be visiting all these places. But for now... Oh. We have a couple other things to do. There are a couple of cards that we don't have yet. Now, I have had the Evil Eye in my deck for a while, as well as the Basilisk, and this is because I need some very distinct cards. The Vampire Bush can be transformed from the Blood Bush or the Basilisk, or it can be found in the... Which stage is it? I want to say it's the Church. Vampire Bushes are just an upgraded version of the Blood Bush. They will drain health from all enemies on screen and return it to you. Now, the Cyclops is a unique monster, whose effect I can't actually remember at this time. If I'm not mistaken, it might just be to neutralize elements and power everybody up, or something relating to the earth element, but it's a card that I almost never see because it's only able to be gotten by transforming an evil eye. But we've got a good card to make now. The Black Dragon, 4 stars of rarity, and for good reason. This is quite possibly the most terrifying independent monster of the game that we're never going to use because it's absurd. And I'll explain more on that when we actually run into it in-game, but for now, we're just going to head out. We have all the cards we can, we've unlocked all the secret stages, it's just about time to enter the final stages before the endgame. Which of course means I gotta get to deck building. Oh, we're gonna have some revisions to do. Well, I'll get to this, and I'll see you guys next time.